All right, so it is 10 o'clock and I see people are still trickling in, but we'll get started. So I'm Nikki Moline. I'm the Sales Operations Manager at Midwest Ground Covers, and I want to thank you guys all for hopping on today to listen to Roy talk about how we can use old plants in new ways. So this is going to be a really great talk. I'm really looking forward to it. So before we begin, just want to give you guys kind of a few ground rules of how this is going to work. So this is a webinar, so your camera and microphone are disabled. We've also disabled the chat feature. So we do want to hear questions from you guys, whatever, as Roy's speaking, whatever is of interest to you. Please make sure you guys type that in the Q&A box. I'm going to be monitoring that, and we'll ask Roy a couple questions at the end of the presentation. If he's unable to get to all the questions, Roy has graciously offered to take those questions and do a little follow-up YouTube video. So if your question doesn't get answered today, we'll make sure it gets answered one way or another. And for those of you that are on here for ASLA CEU credits, we will be sending out a little questionnaire at the end. So you'll get an email with that right after the presentation. You have to take that to get the CEUs, and we'll get that submitted to ASLA. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded, so you can share it with other folks or watch it again yourself, and we'll send out a link once we have that posted to YouTube. So with that, I want to introduce Roy Diblik from Northwind Perennial Farm up in Burlington, Wisconsin. Roy's been working with Midwest for a very long time. We've had a very long partnership with Roy, and absolutely love his work and love working with him. So he's the author of the No Maintenance Perennial Garden book, and he's an expert grower, designer, speaker, and author. And we're really excited to have him here. So before we kick off, Roy had a couple of questions he wanted to ask just to kind of get a feel of where you guys have been and what experiences you've had. So I'm going to put up two polls. So the first poll, we're going to ask you, have you ever visited Lurie Garden at Millennium Park in Chicago? So if you guys could just throw in your answer, yes or no, real quick. And I'm just going to leave this up for a couple seconds. All right, almost all of you guys are done. So if you haven't answered, just click real quick for me. All right, and I'm going to end the polling here, share the results with you guys. So it looks like 59% of you guys have been to Lurie Garden. So that's good to know. And then we're going to launch the second one. So the second question is, have you walked through the Schulenburg Prairie at Morton Arboretum in Lisle? So if you guys could throw your answers in there really fast as well. It's really exciting. We have over 200 attendees today. This is great. Lots of people here to listen to you, Roy.
Wow. I'm sitting in a chair in the middle of nowhere.
All right, I'm going to end this poll for us and share the results with you guys. So it looks like 65% of you have not visited the Schulenburg Prairie. You guys should. It's very nice. So with that, I am going to throw it over to you, Roy. So welcome and take it away.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, everybody. Actually, I want to start by thanks for being around today. It's kind of a wintry day. I'm sure all of you are experiencing the same thing as we have 20 some inches of snow on the ground. Anyway, to start off, I'm happy for this opportunity to talk about new things. We all get encouraged by it because it's a traditional greeting, isn't it? I mean, what's new? How you doing? What's new? We're always asking what's new. And then our children begin talking about what's new because we train them to ask what's new. It's how you doing and what's new. So when I've looked at plants and grown plants over, I think now it's 41 years of growing perennials. And I've gotten to see, geez, there's a lot of plants that were all new to me, everything, even though they've been around for 10,000 years since the glaciers left, to me, they were new. So I think the discussion it's about yourself. It's about coming to know a direction that you're taking, an understanding that you're having, and a way of believing in not just what you are doing, but in what's in your future as far as your relationship to plants. So I just wanted to look at what about the old plants we know, the ones we're familiar with, the ones that have knowledge of living and being and staying healthy in our region. And maybe it's not, I can't move my, hold on, everybody, buckle up. There we go. It's not just always what's new. What's new is a language. It's a word. It's what do we feel? What do we believe? So we're looking at the plants. The plants that all these plants that have been here are patiently waiting for us to understand them. They're in no hurry. They're not going, well, I'm going back to the prairie. I'm going to go back to the nursery. These humans are not going to get it. So the idea is, since the plants are so patient with us, and also if you think about it, there's more plants available now in horticulture than have ever been available before. So I think what we're looking at is not to always drive ourselves to what's the newest plant, but what's your newest thought? What's your new way of being? And I think a way of being that I'm seeing and enjoying in young and old, because it's the individual, it's not the age group. And it's what's the level of knowledge of plants over awareness of plants. A lot of us are aware of a lot of plants. We have an awareness. And I mentioned in my YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, that I'm aware of Neptune. I'm aware of Venus, but I don't know anything about them. I have no knowledge of them. I cannot have a discussion about Neptune, but I'm aware of it. And I see that happening as part of our industry and our horticultural way of being, is we take an awareness of plants and we simply start putting them in the ground to fill spaces. And I'm so excited that we're in such a transformational period. Now that's over, because when you have knowledge of plants, it's similar to having knowledge of friends, knowledge of who they are and how they relate to you and in your way of being. So that when you get to the awareness of a plant and have the knowledge of it, you can do so much more. You can become such a powerful person, and powerful in not just the sales of plant, because really selling a plant isn't as important as sharing the awareness of what the possibilities of plants are to the people you're talking with and sharing the ideas of plants with. So what an exciting moment. And the other part, this question you see, is which plant can you name or know that has never been true to itself? I can name about 632 people that have never been true to themselves. When you look at humans, how many times, myself included, I wanted to play baseball for the White Sox. I wanted to do so many things as a kid. I'm changing my mind all the time. But every plant I've ever met has always been true to itself. I've not had one Rudbeckia come up to me and say, Roy, I've been a Rudbeckia all my life. Is there any possibility I could be a salvia? I'd love to have blue spiked flowers. I'd love to flower earlier. Is that possible? But that's never happened. So when you realize that every plant you've ever touched or loved has always been true to itself, and when you come to know that plant for who it is, that plant will never mislead you. That plant will never turn on you or do something or change its mind. So the opportunity to put plants together in wonderful communities isn't really all based on what's new. And what's new is never always what's better. That's just a form of marketing we've fallen into. And we sometimes don't see our way out of this process. So when we look at our typical types of plantings, we see this is what we find everywhere. This is the homogenized America, and I've talked about this before. And this is all changing. We're not looking at spacing things on 24-inch centers. We're not looking at surrounding plants with accumulated wood, and we're not looking at restricting plant growth by putting layer upon layer of shredded bark or wood or on top of plants, because they can't live in this situation. There's no place on earth where wood has fallen from the sky 3 inches per year around herbaceous plants. It's a human activity, and every plant that has ever lived and been planted by a human it can understand this need to put wood around them. And when you look at this plant trying to push its way through the wood as it turned to fiberboard, you know that we reduce the oxygen flow, the water movement, and we restrict the new growth of plants because they cannot push through the accumulated wood. So recognizing wood mulch is used freely as a component of our planting practices, the art of inventive planting has diminished, creating typical plant patterns that are randomly repeated. This exhaustive practice limits the uniqueness of personality and place. So when we look at what are the models, what is something that we can turn to? We can turn to nature. And you've heard that said how many times? Let's get back to nature. I'm going to go to nature. I want to be natural. I got to have nature. So we express it, but we don't come to know it. What is nature? You're part of nature. You're sitting here watching this is part of your nature. This is the boreal forest floor in Door County at the ridges. This is a healthy way of being for plants. There's 15 to 16 species living per square meter. And if I would have seen this when I started gardening at the Natural Garden in 1979, what people have told me, I would have dug all this up and divided it and replanted it on 12 to 24 inch centers, thinking they needed space. And I would have surrounded every plant with wood because that's how people were telling me, this is what you do. This is how you plant. This is what you need to do. And I questioned all of that simply because I was never trained in horticulture. I'm an outdoor education teacher. That was my background. I started to look and understand and see how plants lived. And I never saw that they were healthy in any type of situation except the collective nature of their own being together. So now we're moving into this era, which is, again, it's a transformational period. We are going into a plant-driven future. And we have this watercolor style of planting. And it's just, again, a form of language to describe plant communities and putting plants together in a healthy way. And it's all about composition. You don't have a beautiful garden simply because you bought all the newest plants. It has nothing to do with the beauty. It's about the composition and the understanding of each plant, new or old to you. There's some plants which I'll show you later. They've been on Earth for, at least in this area, for 8,000 years since the glaciers left. But they could be new to you. And it's how you experience them and come to know them. And this is a garden I did at the Art Institute. And here you see two plants that have been in the perennial trade for at least since the 1900s. But there's been a selection like the Salvia, that's Salvia caradana, but we've had Salvia East Friesland, we've had Salvia nemorosa, which is a parent of this, with similar characteristics, and that's Geranium sanguineum album. So it's the placing of the patterns. I put them tightly together and they can appreciate each other's company. One isn't crowding out the other. They both can receive sunlight to stay healthy and keep a high level of life. But it's the idea of placing them tight together so that we can minimize weed competition. And this is June 1st, or first week in June. So we're cutting the sunlight out from hitting the soil. And this is Salvia Blue Hill. This has been around, these are two hybrids from Ernst Pagels in Germany, I think from the 1960s or 50s. Salvia Blue Hill and Salvia East Friesland. So they've been around for quite a while. But it's the way I think I placed them together that created something more exciting for me than just a monoculture of one or the other. And I call this the Monet moment. So again, it's back to the composition. It's back to that understanding of each plant and how you know them and how you know them to live well together and place them in so many exciting ways. You could change this whole look and do 60% Blue Hill and 40% East Friesland to create a heavier blue and less purple. And this is the Salvia East Friesland I did a planting at the Shed Aquarium, simply mixed it with Calamintha nepeta, subspecies nepeta. Again, plants that have been around since East Friesland since the 50s and Calamintha nepeta since the 80s, subspecies nepeta. And then look at the other opportunity for, this is a salvia with Allium atropurpureum. So in the last 4 to 5 pictures, we've looked at salvias that we've come to know and understand how to live well in our region. And so it's the way they've been positioned with various other plants to create beautiful patterns. And I think that's the direction. I think, well, actually, I know that's the direction we're moving because there's so many, all of us, including yourselves, are seeing that it's the combination and the relationships we build with plants more so than the monoculture planting of plants we practiced in the 80s and 70s and 90s, and even currently now. So what are the indicators that we should be looking for when we touch a plant in a container, or we begin to understand or want to know a plant a little better? And there's two simple things. When you look at a plant in a 4.5 inch or 5 inch pot, if you understand their growth rate and growth habit, it's consequential to placing young plants into the earth. How plants will grow into each other from youth to maturity determines their lifestyle together, how they can collect and share sunlight and nutrients and soil moisture. But it also has a great effect on human inputs, and that's the gardening. When plants are not thought about how they grow into each other, growth rate and growth habit, we create too many unwanted collisions and plants shading each other out. And we have too many opportunities that we have to go in and we have to keep the battle down. We have to thin things, divide things, replant things, minimize reseeding. So we've created something that's not living in harmony. But when you understand the growth rate and growth habit of each plant you touch, how they grow into each other, that then determines how they will share life together and minimize inputs almost by 50 to 75% of what we're traditionally practicing. So let's look quickly at growth rate. And just an example, this is Salvia East Friesland. This is early April, maybe mid-April, depending on the weather. It's about 3 inches tall. Here's growth rate mid-June. So from mid-April to mid-June, which is about a 8 to 10 week, 9-week period, the plant has grown 21 to 24 inches. That's simply the growth rate. And that applies to every plant you touch and every plant you know, or every plant you want to come to know, or every plant you believe you have an interest in. They all have a growth rate, a seasonal growth rate, and they have a maturing growth rate going from youth to maturity. And then look at growth habit. So if you take the same group, these two salvias, Blue Hill and East Friesland, it has a mounding growth rate. That simply means it's about as wide as it is tall. Now, if you look at purple coneflowers or Echinacea, which is an easy one, most of you out there realize it has a vertical growth habit because it's simply taller than it is wide. And it's matching up these growth rate and growth habits together when you put a young plants in the ground that gives you the wonderful opportunity of creating good relationships with plants. And that same opportunity to have a good understanding of the care and nurturing these plants will need from you. So simply looking at a combination of plants, this is Allium Summer Beauty with Calamintha. This is how they relate to each other with mounding growth habits in early June. They have similar growth rates and similar growth habits growing together. And so I added one element to this. So see, you can take Calamintha and Allium, and you can, if you go from this, which is a beautiful look texturally, and you can add Allium atropurpureum, and you enliven the two plants at a higher level. So it's, again, it's composition. It's how we keep creating. Basically, what's new is our way of being. That's the exciting part. It's not, boy, that looks good because I have another new Echinacea. It's, boy, that's looking good because I feel really good about my way of being now, my way of approaching putting plants together in relationships. And here's the Calamintha and the Allium Summer Beauty in bloom in early August, mid-August. And you see the way they can reduce the sunlight from hitting soil and reducing weed competition. And that's the key, is how do you smother out and suppress weeds? And you do that simply by knitting plants together tightly, not keeping them spaced and keep filling the voids with wood. That just simply has a meaningless direction into the future. There's no opportunity for anything to really work well. And look at the opportunities for Calamintha. I'll just run through here to show you the possibility. There it is. We'll go back. That's with the Summer Beauty. Here's Calamintha with Lobelia syphilitica. Here's Calamintha with salvias, again, in a different pattern. Calamintha Rudbeckia speciosa. Speciosa is a beautiful Rudbeckia. It's a little tall. It's taller than Rudbeckia goldstrom. It's much looser than Rudbeckia goldstrom, but you see the way it's more playful than Rudbeckia goldstrom. And the beautiful thing about speciosa, which has been around since the glaciers left, is that it doesn't get septorial leaf spot. It hasn't been introduced to that yet by human beings. Rudbeckia goldstrom simply has septorial leaf spot because It's been asked to do too much by human beings. I'm going to put you everywhere. I'm going to put hundreds of you in. I'm going to wood mulch you, and I'm going to continuously irrigate you with an irrigation system that's on for no rhyme or reason at all. And we've created septorial leaf spot on every plant we have. So we can look at new directions, but new directions because we're more thoughtful about what we're doing. Not simply new because it's market driven, which is so exciting. And it's helpful to everybody. It's helpful to every plant, every community, every garden. It's helpful to all the people that want to become gardeners. Because what you're doing and what I'm trying to do is share our knowledge, our beliefs, and create self-discovery for everybody. You can't tell anybody what to do. If I tell you what to do, you're not going to do anything I tell you. If I tell you I want you to relocate, move to another city, are you going to do that? No. But through self-discovery, if you find a place you want to live, if you find where it's beautiful for you, it all happens through that self-discovery. And look at Calamintha again with Allium Summer Beauty, and with some Coreopsis and with Bouteloua. And here's Calamintha with Sakey's Humlo, with Amsonia. Here's Calamintha with Echinaceas, with Eryngiums, with Perovskia. Here's Calamintha with Silphium, Terebinthinaceum. And some people say, oh, you can't put prairie plants with perennials, Roy. You got to crawl out of your box. You know, we build boxes around ourselves so high, we can't reach our arms up to the top of the box and pull ourselves out. You can't see out of our own box. And we listen to too many people putting us in a box. We have to keep our thoughts fresh and open, and the possibilities of what plants can do sharing life together. This Silphium is living completely happily with Calamintha. Because again, it gets back to goals and objectives of a project, not putting one plant here and one plant there. There's no rules for anything. There's just goals and objectives. What is it you're trying to accomplish? What is the future asking from you? And that's the key, is what is your future asking from you? And what direction are you going to take yourself and your knowledge and the belief you have in gardening? And here's Calamintha again in a parking area in West Union, Iowa. So you can disassemble the Calamintha neighborly grids. You can see all the ways I've showed you Calamintha, and use all the plants that were with those Calaminthas to create hundreds of healthy patterns. So just from the 6 or 7 pictures I've showed you, if you disassemble all of those pictures and list all those plants independently, you can recombine them hundreds, maybe thousands of different ways. You might have a list of only 10 plants. And I know when I share this with some people, oh, Roy, 10 plants, I need more than 10. No, you don't. Start with 10 good plants, start with 15. And write down, especially this time of the winter, when I look out the window and see 24 inches of snow, I can sit here all day putting grid patterns together and making combinations. And to be honest with you, I do, but I'm not telling any of you to be me. You have to come to know who you are and the beautiful ways you want to go putting plant combinations together. And then when you, and even in the selling of plants, not selling plants to be market driven, it's selling plants to show people the possibilities of what plants can be in their lives. And those people that you share this with, and they through their own self-discovery, they come to know what the possibilities are and the opportunities, they will never want to not be around you. So if you're offering plants to people, they will continuously come back and want to know how much more can I learn from you, and how much I can share what I've learned with you. So you create conversation, which it's a beautiful thing, and it's all happening. So here's 2 plants from a pattern that Pete Outhoff put together. These 2 plants have been around since the glaciers left. This is simply Echinacea purpurea and Echinacea pallida, living comfortably together. But it's what I mentioned. You can see it's all about composition. This makes you tear up and cry. It's so beautiful, with the Perovsky in the background, the Allium Christophii mingled in, and all of you can do this. Some people, well, Roy, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I've created excuses for myself with everything, but I learned it's not what I don't have anymore. It's not that I don't have something. To do anything, I have to be somebody first. I have to be something. And when I'm finding out what I can become and who I can become, then I do something. And when I do something, then I have something. And I learned that from a class I took. Be somebody, do something, and have something. And I use that. I use that because I had too many stories I was telling myself about why I couldn't do something. So I just thought I'd share that with you because it's all about being who we become. And look at the echinacea palette drifting through limonium, latifolium. And this is one of two ways to put echinacea palette together. And all these limonium has been around in the perennial industry since the 1880s, 1890s, I'm imagining. And some people don't grow up because, oh, Roy, it seeds too much. Well, I don't know. Does it seed too much, or is it seeding too much because you don't have it combined with the right plants to inhibit the seedlings from becoming adults? Or does it seed too much? Maybe you put it in too early and you should have waited 2 years to put it in when the plants were more mature. And if it does seed too much and you realize that, look at how much you know that other people don't know. It's not something to push aside because it doesn't do what you want. I'm not going to use you. You're not doing what I want. How many plants are ever going to do what you want? I don't think there's a plant out there that's going to say, boy, I can't wait to do everything this per human wants me to do. They're not going to do anything you want because you have to come to know them. And they're just like people. And look at the echinacea shining with Parthenium integrifolium. Again, two plants that have been around since the glaciers left. These are beautiful native plants, and the patterns that this is at Lurie Garden that Pete put together. And the thing is, you can do this. You can simply do this, just taking time to pursue it a little bit. Take a few moments to write down some patterns, get some grid paper and put some combinations together. And the idea is selling patterns. Why are we selling individual plants to people? Why don't we sell them groupings of plants, patterns they can take home, small ones and put together? You can sell 5, 6, 7 plants at a time. We're doing that here at Northwind. And I'm not saying we're doing good because we're not a good business. We're not business people. We hang on every year. But yet we're trying things. We see people, and I'll show you that a little later, people are actually happily buying 5 or 7 plants together, and we give them the patterns for free to take home. And you look at the Parthenium as it's still in bloom in late August, September. The echinaceas are fading and the Spiralis is in bloom behind it. It's not about what new plants will make the design better. It's about how well you understand the plants you're aware of and how to come to know them better. So again, it's not that new plants aren't going to make anything better. That doesn't mean they're not good plants, but if you don't come to know them, you're not aware of them, how do you know how to fit them in your way of designing? You know how to fit them into the styles that you like to create. So it's trialing them, seeing how they do, seeing how they work into who you are. And I have to say, if you go to Midwest Ground Covers, they got tremendous trial gardens and they need to be visited. So every time you're out there, walk through, witness, look. And everything you take back with you, you can share with all the people you talk to. And the first person that's going to benefit from it is you. You're just going to get better and better and better. And you're going to enjoy all the things you've come to know. And you can't wait to share it then. You're going to bust loose. I look at Cal McGrath's Carl Forster. It's been around since a long time. And oh, geez, really, Carl Forster, it's all over it's all over the place. It never was the plants jumping off the back of pickup trucks, finding locations around all the shopping malls. It was the way it was used. It was used without imagination. Put in hundreds and hundreds of them around shopping malls and gas stations. And there's nothing wrong with that, except it's boring. There's no emotional moment with hundreds of plants in a big pile. But if you look at this, look at the vertical accent of Carl Forster. It has such a strong way of being, and simply drifted Phlox Blue Paradise through it. And then the Phlox Blue Paradise still in bloom into early October. And look at the Carl Forster, the vertical habit, and then the Perovskia, the gray of the Perovskia, and the soft look of Spiralis as it blooms in the fall. So it's season by season by season. Every plant has a statement to make. Every plant has an opportunity to enlighten the garden, to encourage people to see something emotional. And here it is with Agastache Blue Fortune. So you can see, just split those Carl Forster up, separate them a little bit, and there's I can't even name all the plants you can weave in between Carl Forster because of its beautiful vertical habit. Again, it's unlimiting. And usually I find what stops me is myself. I tried again to find excuses why I couldn't do things, but no, everything I couldn't do, it's because I did it to me. I stopped myself from whatever my future possibilities were. So when you introduce yourself to a new plant, understand why you need that plant and how it will make your planting better. So when you see a plant, you really have a romantic moment with, boy, I really like that for some odd reason, texture, foliage, flower, whatever the reason. When you see it, how will that fit into your style of planting or sharing plants with other people? And when you see how it fits in, then you can see the need and the opportunity for that plant. And you do that, we'll do that all the time. But it's important to question, how does it fit who I am? And I look at Perovskia, oh, geez, Roy, again, Perovskia, it's been around. Well, that's how you combine it. So here with the white coneflowers and the Anchostachys as a background, I drift the white coneflowers through the Perovskia, Coreopsis golden showers. You see the Carl Forster in the background. I put Coreopsis golden showers between the Perovskia, just spacing them out and creating a healthy community with groups of plants living well together. Again, minimizing your inputs. They still need you, but they need you in a much limited way. Perovskia with echinaceas on boulevards and some Coreopsis. Look at the ghost gray of Perovskia with little blue stem and baptisia. And it's all about workability. Because a lot of people design all these projects and the best they're ever going to look is at the ribbon cutting. And after that, they all decline because most of the plants that were put in have no relationship to each other. There's no workability. And workability is the condition and performance of our actions. So when you're designing something with the idea of workability. And it's much easier to do if you know the plants. So that's why the old plants you've come to know and come to depend on, it just create more patterns with them. And then you have workability, things that can be cared for and loved and maintained through the years and have longevity in the planting. There's no workability here. This garden has way too much going on. Yet this is a picture we'll see in all the gardening magazines this spring. Marketing, selling, buy dahlias, buy stilbea, buy boxwood. No one can take care of this. It's not humanly possible, but knowledge-wise too. But people don't have enough knowledge to do this. But this is what people are being told to look at and buy and see. And then we wonder why do we have more gardeners? Because we're not helping them with workability. And here's a simple Sprablus heterolepis with allium purple sensation. This is the good beginning. The allium has been around, the purple sensation, it seeds freely, but let it seed through the Sprablus, that's okay. And the Sprablus hides the lower foliage of the allium. Here's Sprablus with allium summer beauty in a meadow. This all gets mowed. We mow it all and leave the leaf fall and stem fall in the garden. And look at Sprablus with the Stakes Humalo, the old faded dark brown flowers of Stakes Humalo. This is too exciting. And look at Stakes Humalo with Sprablus, this is in July, mid to late July. Here it is in the fall. There it is in July. And the Sprablus leaves all kinds of air movement for the Stakes, so the plants never suffer from any disease issues. And you can take Stakes Humalo and mix it with Stakes rosea. So you can create, again, another Monet moment. They have basically the same cultural needs. And there's Stakes Humalo with rosea, with Nepeta early bird, with geranium lancastriense or striatum, whichever one you prefer, a little summer beauty mixed in. And here's Stakes Humalo with Coreopsis golden showers. Here's the seed heads of Stakes Humalo mixed with Geranium Orion. And Geranium Orion is a wonderful plant and that's been around since the 1900s, but nobody knows about it because it doesn't have market value. It doesn't have and I feel sorry for some of the older good plants. They just aren't patented. There's not an extra nickel for somebody to make somewhere. But Geranium Orion has durability and it doesn't split in the center. Johnson's blue boom, it falls down. You prune it back, it comes up with beautiful new growth. Geranium Orion fills its own center. But yet I have some empathy for it because it doesn't have a patent behind it a little bit. And some of the patented plants are beautiful, and some of them are a waste of time because they're not regionally dependable. And here's Stakey's Umlo with allium. This is peekaboo. I think it's peekaboo. We call it shorty here, but it's peekaboo from Midwest Ground Covers. But the thing is, look at how many different ways I've used Stakey's Umlo. So again, the possibilities are endless. And here's a plant that just came up. I have to show you this one. This is new to all of you. It was even new to me. It's a hybrid seedling from Tennesseensis and Purpurea that came up. And I sell 2 a year. It'll never look good. Doesn't represent itself well in a pot, but in the garden, everybody wants one. That's called Echinacea Northwind. It flowers almost all summer because of its parentage from Echinacea tennesseensis. And it floats above the garden like little purple butterflies with those dark orangish purple cones. But again, on the benches, I think we sold 2 last year. So it's not a bench plant, but when people see it, then we start to sell it. I use it a lot in design. And I use Salvia Wisui. You see how Salvia Wisui, this plant has been around, I think, since the 60s. It's an Ernst Pagel's introduction, but it's the earliest to bloom, and it blooms right through its own flowers. You don't have to cut anything back, and it looks so artistic. I have to show you. I'm designing a garden now, and my inspiration comes from this is Edward Villard. You see, it's a book of he's an impressionistic painter, and I have this sitting next to me. I thumb through the pictures to get an idea of what plants to choose. I put a palette together based on color tones within the. It just helps me. It helps me think. I get stalled out occasionally, and I just need some inspiration. And this is the Salvia Wisui is a beautiful salvia to do with an impressionistic look. And there's salvias with, look at Geranium Orion. I mentioned it before, just leaning into things so casually, and the salvia mixed with allium. And we'll end a little bit with this is Veronicastrum virginicum. It's a native plant, not used nearly enough, too easy. And again, to a lot of you out there, this might be a new plant. But again, it's been around since the glaciers left. It has a beautiful vertical growth habit. So when we talk about what's new, which is a great greeting, what's new, I always had what's new for me. How can I always want to try to step out of the world of ordinary. I'm trying it with everything. Foods now. I'm drinking fennel tea. I used to drink a lot of green tea. I got fennel tea with oregano in it and lemon. So I don't know if it's an age thing, but I would ask that for all of you. How are you going to step out of the world of ordinary? Because that's what we're living in. We're living in a world of ordinary. We're finding marketing to be the same old thing with all the different industries. But yet when you step out of the world of ordinary, you create all these opportunities for yourself and for the things we're doing. And visit the Schulenburg Prairie. Take a walk through there. It's the best recreated prairie in the Midwest. It has over 8 to 12 species per square meter, and you will be inspired. When I took Pete out off there, he changed the Lurie garden design in 2003 simply by taking a walk through the Schulenburg Prairie. And in the fall, the beauty of it in the fall. And every moment you're there will leave an impression on you. And that impression you'll recall so many thousands of times when you're either talking to people about plans or sharing or doing a design or just feeling good about who you are. So this is some of the signage I wanted to show you that we do at Northwind. Again, I'm not naive enough to think we don't have to make money. And I grew up in Berwyn, and my whole life, my parents said, well, you got to earn a living. So I always had the idea of earning a living, not making money. And we sell these patterns to people. And I put an impressionistic painting on there and these small patterns, and we have the plants on the benches. And I'm going to be working with Midwest Ground Covers later on some of these ideas. So if you like this approach, and I think this can move you into the future as far as, again, creating sales of plants, but you're selling plants to people that have a good beginning. And then the idea is they're just not taking one echinacea to the car. They're taking the group with them. And then we hand out these patterns to the people so they can read about the plants, what relations they have to pollinators, birds, and butterflies. and explaining to them too. It's all in context. It doesn't mean if you put this in, you're going to see all that. It's the expanse of the garden in context with all the other plants you have in your garden. So it is a discussion with people. But we found this to be helpful as far as our sales at Northwind. So your possibilities are endless. So now what's new is the unstoppable you. To me, that's what's new, how you become unstoppable within your own way of living. So thanks a lot, and I'll be happy to take questions. As many as you have are cool too.
Okay, cool. So I'm back. Thanks, Roy. And we do have a bunch of questions. So if you guys have any right now, since we do have a little bit of time left, why don't you go ahead and pop those into the Q&A, and I'll just kind of go down the list. So one of the questions was, Roy, do you have a plant list that you could potentially provide to folks on your favorite top used plants? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
yeah, go on the Northwind website. It's called the Appropriate Perennial Plant List. So it's plants I've added that I've had in the book, and they're plants you have to make. First, it's all about durability. So it's plants that live and have knowledge of living in our region. And then and you can add freely to that once you have your plantings established. But yeah, it's on our website, and it's called the Appropriate Perennial Plant List. It's for sun or shade too.
Perfect. Okay, next question. Salvia is striking when it blooms, but without a lot of deadheading. It seems like the bloom time's too short, but they see that you use it a lot. So can you comment on the short bloom time and why you still feel like it's worth using?
Well, I use Salvia wisui all the time because it looks, I showed that photo, it looks beautiful blooming through its old flowers. So I have to say, I never deadhead Salvia. I never cut them back. I let everything bloom through its old flowers. And the thing with deadheading, that's where you have to pull yourself above the box a little bit to see if deadheading is just something you do simply because it's always done. Sometimes the idea is to limit that. And Salvia wisui, and the other one is Salvia snowhill. Salvia snowhill bloom, it's a white one. It blooms all summer. It's a wonderful salvia.
Okay, next question. Without access to large amounts of leaf mulch, what do you suggest as a soil top dressing in hot climates while the plants are still growing together?
Wow. Well, I'd say then if you can get finely shredded bark or wood mulch, you're just going to use it that one time to get the young plants established. I call them children, it's all right. The young plants established. So then after that, never need it again. Just once you get the finely ground wood chips, don't get big, long shredded pieces of bark from a telephone company. Anything that a human can ride as a raft, do not put around your plants. And then after that, just mow everything. Let the plants live in their own leaf litter. I'm trying not to use the word litter or debris because that's a negative term. I like leaf fall and stem fall. And just mow it and let the plants live in their leaf fall and stem fall. And encourage any communities around you that harvest leaves to put them into a pile and have them composted. We're doing that in Fontana, the village of Fontana. Tub grinds all their leaves, and then they resell it and give it to the community and resell it to contractors locally. And that way they pay for their tub grinding, and they save a lot of space because they take 15 windrows and turn it into one. So there's a lot happening. I think it's in stay in communication with your community. I think if you stay in communication with the community, you start to find out a lot, and you can encourage a lot too.
Very good. We have a couple questions on spacing. So one question that we have is, what does tight together mean practically? Does that mean ignoring spacing guidelines or actually follow them? So what's your recommendation on spacing?
I ignore spacing guidelines, and I look at plant growth rate and growth habits. When you know how fast a plant's going to grow from a 4-inch, 5-inch container, and then when you know the growth habit and growth rate, you can determine how they will live together when they collide, because you want every plant to collide. You don't want any space. So if you know growth rate and growth habit and understand it. Let me show you a little chart. Am I still on a picture? I'm making this chart of growth rate and growth habit. This is for Perovsky Little Spire. So on this end here, I have the 4.5-inch pot. I have the plant the first year in the ground, 6 inches wide. By the fall, it's 8 inches wide. It's going to grow about 14 inches tall the first year. Then I have the second year, and then I have the third year. And I write these little charts up so that way I can understand growth rate and growth habit. And then I know what the plant's going to do, and I know by its growth rate and growth habit who I can put in compatibly with that. So I don't really worry about spacing. If I look at my average, I average 15 inches on spacing, some 12 inches and some 18 inches. So that's about my average. But again, it's really good to know the growth rate and growth habit of every plant, because that'll tell you right away what relationships you can create.
Very good. Have a question here. So obviously this conversation today was more heavily based on perennials. Do you have any shrubs, Roy, that you like to use a lot in your designs, or any that you would recommend?
No, I don't know anything about shrubs. I appreciate them. And I turn to people that have that's why collaboration is the most vital part of anything all of us do. Like I work now with Jeff Epping from Old Brick Botanic Garden. He's helping me do some shrub borders, and Joel Barzak at Blooming Nursery and Blooming Gardens and Sycamore is very good with shrubs. So I'd like to help you with that, but I feel more comfortable saying, no, I don't know. I can't help.
That's good. Let's see here. Do you ever use annuals, Roy? I found this question interesting.
Oh, yeah. I have to say, that's what's so cool about getting older. I'm use more and more annuals. I'm learning what annuals are filling in good, because you have to look at what aspect of gardening you're relating to. And I relate a lot to people like to be entertained by plants. So I'm looking at, I grow a lot of dahlias, the Mystic series with the dark foliage and copper flowers. And I use a lot of angelonias because they don't compete with the perennials. They grow vertically in Salvia farinaceae. So anything that's vertical, like the angelonias, cosmos, the dahlia Mystic series dahlias are beautiful. They blend in nicely. And every year I pick up a few more ideas by visit, like go to the Ball. The Ball has the display gardens, and that's super to visit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Ball display gardens are gorgeous. I have a couple questions on shade. So one of them is, can you get a prairie look in shade? And do you have some recommendations on potential combinations that can be used in shade gardens?
Yeah, well, first you look at what's the percentage of shade. If the tree canopies are touching, or if they're loose, or if it's shade from a building, the density of shade. And then I simply put a ground layer of sedges down. So I start every shade garden with a ground layer of sedges, let them knit together, and using the lower sedges. And then the sedges have always lived a communal life on Earth. So that means they're receptive to additional planting. And then I would enhance them with hostas, ferns, whatever, even woody plants, or I put the woody plants in first. And the sedges reduce your weed competition because they shade the ground out from early spring late into November. And again, the sedges are communal. And then you can enhance based on budget. Like we're doing a garden now, and we're going to put in 300 ferns this year. It's the third year and the sedges are established, but we're going to go in and put 300 ferns in this year because the family had the money to do it. So I would start and cover the ground with carex and find, I think Midwest, you go to Natural Garden with Midwest Garden. If you go to Natural Garden, they have a beautiful sedge display. So you can see the growth habit, growth rate. They might have a tour coming up when we open up our visiting. And that's a great place to go see sedge plantings.
Yeah, sedges are great. Yeah, and we do have a carex classroom at Natural Garden. So it's open during business hours, and you guys can come whenever you would like for a self-guided tour. So yeah, we have a majority of the carex planted there. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, that's great to visit that. That's very good.
So a couple of questions on mowing. So people are interested in around what time they should mow and how tall, how, like at what height you prefer to mow, and some specific questions on some of the grasses too with higher crowns and how you deal with that.
Well, the mowing, we generally do it in March. We have an opportunity in March to do it. And we have a mower it's called a billy goat, and it can mow plants that are 5-6 feet tall, and has mulching blades on it. So it's a walk behind. I just walk behind it, it pulls me around, and I mow everything down. I go over it 5 or 6 times to break it up into smaller pieces with the mulching mower. And then I go back and I, with hand pruners, and just kind of tidy it up. You know, you see something sticking up in different directions and you prune it off. Now there's other options. Now, if you look at Larry Garden, Laura at Larry Garden was pruning back based on bee hollow plants for bees to lay eggs in the spring. And I didn't know anything about that, but that was very cool. So there's ways now where you can string trim everything down, starting at the top with a string trimmer and work your way down. And you can walk through and selectively leave the hollow stem plants about 18 inches high for opportunities for native bees to lay their eggs. So we keep evolving. Our knowledge keeps growing, which is kind of cool.
Very nice. Can you remind us, Roy, what the name of the hybrid coneflower was that you mentioned in your presentation?
Oh, I called it Northwind. Yeah, okay. Anything that pops up at Northwind. And again, I have to say, you're never going to sell it. It doesn't represent well in a pot. But I use it in every garden I do now, I think, because it's so beautiful, the way it floats like purple butterflies. But I would say it would struggle to sell at any garden center because it doesn't look good.
Do you guys sell it at all at Northwind, or?
Yeah, we have it on the benches and nobody buys it.
Okay.
Just sits there. Then I end up taking it off the bench and I put it in the garden. Yeah, when people see it, they buy it, but it doesn't. It's not. People aren't rushing over.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite variety of Perovskia, if you had to recommend one?
Well, I like a triplicifolium because of its bulk. You can put it with large things, and I prune. I like the little spire because of its smaller size, and it has a wholeness to its leaves. And I'm trying blue steel. Blue steel is an upright shorter, about 36 inch. So, and I had I'd say blue spire is what I use mostly for smaller gardens, and I use the species triplicifolium. And I think blue steel will be a nice in between, at about 34, 36 inches tall.
Very cool. Have you tried Calero in any of your designs, Roy, and had any success with it?
Yeah. It kind of wanders around and spreads. I grow it for myself. I don't sell it because you have to manage it tightly in a pot. It sprawls all over the place. It's very difficult to manage in a container. You have to keep pruning it. So I grow it and I use it only in projects because it's difficult to sell on the bench because when you prune it, nobody buys it. And when it flowers, you can't sell it because it sprawls all over the place. So it's not an easy plant to sell, but I use it in gardens. And I put it I don't put it in the first year. I put it in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th year when the plants are more mature. And then the calero will spread around the mature plants. So I put it in the first year, it smothers everything. It gets too big. It covers up too much.
Quite a few questions on Schulenburg Prairie. So as a reminder to everybody, that's at the Morton Arboretum. And Roy, can you just speak a little bit about like why you recommend going there and maybe what time of year you would recommend for a first timer?
Oh gosh, yeah. I'd say if you say you want to have a happy cry, maybe you cry most of your whole life. You cried because of sadness. You go to Schulenburg Prairie around late June, early July. You will tear up and you'll be the happiest person you've ever met. It's the most beautiful recreated prairie I've ever been in. When I first saw it in 1978, I couldn't believe, why isn't this everywhere? And when I went to talk to Ray Schulenburg, I wanted to meet him and see, he said, Roy, people aren't ready for it. And we're still not ready for it because we don't know enough about how to appreciate it. So you have to see it to understand it, to appreciate it. And Ray started that I think it was 1961. And he and a group of other guys drove around, and all they did in the 60s, and it was their whole goal with Bob Betts and I forget his, Dick Young. Dick Young was in Kane County. They all drove around to find the remnant prairies so we could save them. because they knew if we could save the remnant prairies, we'd have something to learn from. Without the remnants, we have no idea anymore how anything works. So we owe that to Ray, and Floyd Swink was part of that. But yeah, you have to visit. You should visit it. And the Markham Prairie on the south side of Chicago too. That's stunning. That's a beautiful place.
Very nice. Question on amending soil for a new garden. What do you do to prep a bed when you're installing a new garden, Roy?
Nothing. We kill the sod and plant right through the dead sod, and we plant with a drill, and I put leaf mulch over the dead sod. If you rototill, you got first you're ruining the structure of the soil, and then you're adding organic matter that you don't really need. If you had sod there living and dying for 8, 10, 12 years, you have organic matter probably 6 to 8 inches deep. So you have a good planting. And we just plant through the dead sod, which is organic matter. And then we don't have weed competition, and we don't break the structure of the soil. That's what's so important, because then it has to redefine itself and resettle. And the plants are floating in that rototilled soil. And then we cover everything with leaf mulch, or we put the leaf mulch down, and we drill everything in with a still drill with a 4-inch bit, 4.5-inch bit, and we're done. And then sometimes we remulch with leaves because the people want us to do it because they like the look of leaf mulch. Or we mow everything, then we put the leaf mulch over what we mow. So that makes people feel good. But I have to say, you do have to prep soil on new construction. New construction is totally different. So if you have a new construction site, yeah, we just bring in leaf mulch, and then we put plants in that would fit the conditions we're asking them to live in.
Awesome. A bunch of questions on sedges, actually. So do you have one that you prefer to use when you're kind of using it as a live mulch?
Yeah, we're working at a group, so you don't have monoculture. Carex pennsylvanica is easily available, and that's one I use quite a bit. I mix with Carex albicans, Carex montana, Carex gricia, and these are all different sedges with different textures. And albicans is mounding. It looks like Carex pennsylvanica, but has a mounding habit. And then there's 6 or 7 other sedges I'm growing now to create more diverse mixes. But then each mix is based on each particular job. So the mix then is created based on what the job site is. But again, if you start with Carex pennsylvanica, that would be the bread and butter one. And then you mix in different textures like Carex blanda, Carex gricia. What else and moments of Carex springeli, that's more architectural, and Carex brevior. You don't want a lot of them. They get too messy. If they split in the center, and they send up new growth. And I think Carex montana. So there's quite a bit. If you come to North, if you're still on there, all of you out there, I extend an invitation, come to Northwind. I'm here usually on Sundays. I'd be happy to walk around and show you our sedge plantings. I have them everywhere through our woods. And again, I would visit when the opportunity is there to go to natural garden, because there's firsthand witnessing is the best thing. Reading is cool, and watching these movies or shows we have is cool, but it's firsthand experience and witnessing something. You can't beat that. And again, the Midwest display gardens. I don't know, Nikki, there's a lot of plantings out there. You got they're so wonderful to visit, I think. I can't hear you.
I think you can hear me now. Okay.
There you go.
My sound's doing weird things again. Okay. So on killing the sod, this will be the final question. What methods do you use? And if somebody couldn't use any chemicals, do you have any recommendations?
I would go online and find out what they recommend. I use glyphosate one time, and then I that's all I ever need. I kill it once, I never need it again. And then I put plants in the ground, and the living and dying of roots brings tremendous life back to the soil. And that's all really, that's your soil amendment, is put a plant in the ground. You put a plant in the ground, the biology of the soil year after year after year is going to get healthier, healthier, and healthier. And that's all you really look for, is the health of the earth, the health of the soil. And like I said, I used glyphosate once. 10 days later, I'm planting, and I never need it again. So there's no dependency on chemicals. Like, we don't want that in our lives either. We don't want to be dependent on pharmaceuticals. We want to get healthy. And once you're healthy, then you're not dependent on pharmaceuticals. But you might need something for a moment to get you back to being healthy. It's just being thoughtful, and being that's all I can say, is you got to be, it's being thoughtful. But yeah, if you go online, there's all kinds of alternatives to killing sod.
Super. Well, thank you guys for all your questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but like I said, I will be sending them to Roy, and he will graciously answer what he can, and we'll get that out to all of our attendees. As a reminder, this was recorded, and we will be posting it on YouTube, so you guys can watch it again or share it with other folks. And then I want to do just a little bit of a plugging for both Roy and Midwest Ground Covers. So please make sure to follow Roy and Midwest Ground Covers on Instagram and on YouTube. I know Roy has been putting out some wonderful video content on there, as have we. So there's a lot of resources out there for you guys to continue to learn. I would also encourage you guys to visit both of our websites as well, Northwind and Midwest Ground Covers. There were a lot of questions on plants for particularly difficult situations like salt or deep shade, that kind of thing. There's a lot of resources on both of our websites. So make sure to just take a deep dive while you still can in the winter before the season picks up. And as far as Instagram goes, a little bit of a plug for us. Yes, we do have a lot of display gardens, both designed by Roy and Austin Eichscheid, Pete Udoff, and Jens Jensen. So we're working with a lot of these folks to show you guys how these plant communities work. And every other week in the growing season, really, when the plants are doing their thing, both myself and Shannon McInerney are out in the garden, going out there, showing you guys what's looking great, what plant communities we're loving, and even showing you guys some stuff that doesn't work. So, we want to show you the good, the bad, and the wonderful things too. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time out to sit with us today. And Roy, thank you. You were wonderful as always. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, Roy. See you later.